This is a Samsung laptop. I am a Mac guy and, well, this could get interesting. Okay, so this is the Samsung Book5 Pro. This is the 16-inch version. There's a 14-inch edition as well. And these are the specs. This isn't a review. I'm not going to go through these specs, not because Rene Ritchie told me I shouldn't be doing that, because you can find them elsewhere. And this video is all about what I love about this laptop and what I don't love about it. Bearing in mind, I am normally a MacBook user. So I have a MacBook Pro, I have a MacBook Air, I have a Mac Mini, I have an iMac. I'm one of those people, basically. So converting me to a Samsung Windows laptop is going to be quite a task. But I found 5 things that I love about it and 5 things that I don't love about it. So this video will be great if you're thinking about going from macOS to Windows, if you're thinking about just buying one of these anyway, or if you just want to go into the comments and call me an idiot. 5 reasons I do like the Samsung Book5 Pro. I've written them down and everything. Number 1 is the simple configuration process. Basically, there aren't many configuration options, certainly in the UK. In the US, you do get the choice of 32 gig of unified memory over the 16 gig if you want. For some reason, at the time of filming, you only get the 16 gig version in the UK, but whatever. The other option is obviously the 14-inch or the 16-inch and 512 gig of storage or 1 terabyte of storage. That's it. If you want to buy a MacBook Pro, you need a good week to work out which one you need, and even if you get to that stage, although you could watch my buying guides, of course. If you want to buy a MacBook Air, it's a little bit easier, but there's still lots of weird choices that you have to make about the chip and all sorts of stuff. So bravo, Samsung, you've made this easy to buy. Did I just say unified memory? I meant RAM. Is it still RAM with Windows? Who knows, who cares? Right, number 2 on my list of things that I love about this laptop is the touchscreen. Look, you can touch it and it does stuff. Amazing. Now, as a MacBook user, that is still a novelty and it doesn't really wear off. Admittedly, I'm using it a little bit less than I have done on previous Windows laptops that have had touchscreens, but it's still handy occasionally to reach out and press things on the screen because we're so used to doing that. It's built into us thanks to these devices. So I will not hear anything bad about a touchscreen. And yes, I hope that one day Apple does it, but they won't. They'll never do it. So that's one thing that Windows and Samsung definitely has over Apple. Number 3 is Quick Share, and I said recently that the Apple ecosystem is the only reason pretty much that I'm still using the iPhone 16 Pro Max. That's pathetic, so I thought let's try Quick Share, which is basically Samsung's version of AirDrop, which means you can take a file from this and very easily transfer it onto this. And it works. It isn't as smooth and as fast in my experience as AirDrop. It took over a minute to send a JPEG image from this to that for some reason, but it works. And yeah, it works. You can't get that excited about this, but it's there. And if I switched to this and this, I'd still be able to get photos from that to that relatively quickly. Number 4 is Phone Link, and this is a little bit like iPhone mirroring, which is very hard to say, on macOS, where you can bring up your iPhone display on your Mac. That's the worst part of it. So I brought up the S25 Ultra's display on here, and it was pretty much unusable for some reason. Just, trying to scroll through Instagram, for instance, just took forever. It was horrendous, completely useless. The other thing that it does have, though, is this kind of Windows app, which has access to your phone's camera roll. It has access to call records, messages, notifications. I like that. That's a nice way of accessing stuff on here from here without having to actually bring up this display. It's I prefer that, I think, possibly to iPhone mirroring. Number 5 is that I really like this design. It's very well made. It feels like it's worth quite a bit of money, like a MacBook, and oh, this could go down badly. It has serious, let me just show you it on the side profile like that. It has serious previous generation MacBook Air vibes. It's a wedge design. So if you imagine this is the 15-inch MacBook Air, the M2 version or the M3 version, whatever, they've gone to this much more, well, flatter design basically. Samsung have gone for the wedge, and bravo Samsung, because if you're a MacBook Air fanboy like me, this was the best ever MacBook Air shape, and Samsung are still peddling it. I love it. And actually, for a big laptop, it doesn't feel too big. It's not too heavy, and it's not too troubling for your backpack, whereas the 16-inch MacBook Pro is a horrendous thing to carry around. I've not been troubled with this at all. It's a very convenient and very portable laptop, and you get a massive display. Big fan. When you're using a high-end laptop like the Samsung Book5 Pro or the MacBook Pro, your video calls and recordings need to look just as sharp, but sometimes they don't, which is why it's worth looking at this, which is the OBSBot Tiny 2 Lite. I've been using this thing for a while now, and just that 4K footage alone is a massive step up from what both of those laptops can do. Whether I'm on a Zoom call with my team, having important meetings with sponsors, or recording content for future projects, everything just looks clearer and more natural, even in lower light. But one of my favourite things is this AI tracking. I can move around, and the OBSBot Tiny 2 Lite will keep me in the frame. It can zoom in and zoom out to keep that framing looking natural. It's just one less thing to worry about. Another feature I found myself using a lot is the hand tracking. You can just raise a hand to control zoom or switch focus without having to click anything, which is very handy if you're mid-sentence in a presentation and you just want to make a quick adjustment. Audio is of course just as important as video, and the built-in noise reduction mic has been fantastic at cutting out background noise, whether I'm in a busy coffee shop or just dealing with household sounds, or in this studio. The mic does a fantastic job of keeping my voice nice and clear. And I've been using that mic for this entire segment. The Sony half-inch CMOS sensor and HDR support ensures that colours stay accurate and details remain sharp. You just plug it in and it works straight away with Zoom, OBS and other streaming or meeting apps. There's no extra software headaches, which is really appreciated. If you're looking for an easy upgrade to your video quality without making things complicated, the OBSBot Tiny 2 Lite really is worth checking out. I've left a link in the description if you want to find out more. Okay, 5 things that I don't like about the Samsung Book5 Pro, starting with this, the trackpad, which is huge. Look at it, it's nearly as big as my head. That isn't the issue though, it's quite nice to have a big trackpad to be fair, but it's more the responsiveness, and this might be down to Windows partly, I don't know, but it's just not as responsive and as enjoyable to use as a MacBook trackpad, which has always been the pinnacle for me really. It's just, it feels a little bit laggy, and I keep hitting the right click function for some reason, which is down here somewhere, I think. It's just, there we go. It just doesn't really work in the same way as a MacBook Pro or even a MacBook Air's trackpad. It's just not as good. Number 2 is, I'm afraid, Windows. And no, this isn't Samsung's fault, and yes, it's completely unfair because some people don't like macOS. It's just your preference really, isn't it? But I should preface this by saying that I was a big Windows user for many years. The problem is that I wasn't very good at building PCs. I did all that stuff, by the way, when I was a kid, basically. I wasn't very good at it though, which meant that I spent most of my time pulling my hair out, literally, about Windows. And then I went and worked in jobs that I didn't enjoy, that forced me to use Windows, and that gives me, both those things combined are just a kind of, it creates this preconception about Windows that is completely unfair, but I cannot shake off. I keep trying, and modern Windows is very, very unlike the Windows that I used to destroy with my PCs. But it doesn't matter. I still think of those times. And it's things like the inability to press spacebar to preview files that you can do on macOS. I do that all the time. When that goes, that's very annoying. I've written here, it just feels a bit clunky compared to macOS. That's a bit unfair. The first thing that I do when I get a Windows machine is install PowerToys and turn the entire keyboard into a Mac keyboard. I'm one of those guys. Number 3 is the lack of MagSafe, or Samsung's version of MagSafe, obviously. If you don't know what that is, it is this, which is Apple's own charging method, which involves this magnetic connection. Really straightforward. It just means that if anyone walks past your table and trips over the cable, it just comes out like that, and it doesn't take the laptop with it. I do miss that on this Samsung laptop because, well, it hasn't happened, thankfully. I promise Samsung it hasn't happened. If anyone walks past and trips over the cable, whoosh, gone. Number 4 is a bit of a weird one. It's the lack of a full-sized SD card slot. Now, the MacBook Pro has one, so that has a full-sized SD card slot, which is incredibly useful. The Book5 Pro doesn't, but it does have a micro SD card slot, which is a really weird choice, I think. I don't understand why Samsung has gone for that over a full-sized SD card slot, because there's space for it, and surely the big one, the big cards, the big SD cards are more widely used. Maybe they're not. Maybe this is for the millions of people who seemingly have the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Maybe it's for people who use drones. Most of those cameras use micro SD cards. If you know why they've done this, then get involved in the comments. It just seems like a very strange decision. Number 5 is the speaker system. Now, yes, this has Dolby Atmos support, which is quite nice. It gives you a nice wide soundstage, but when compared against the MacBook Pro and even the MacBook Air, the speakers just aren't up to it. They're not as deep, they're not as full sounding. If there's one thing that Apple is very good at, it's making small speakers sound much bigger than they are, and I haven't found a Windows laptop yet that can match them. And unfortunately, the Book 5 Pro isn't as good either. Apple still wins every time in that, and it's getting annoying. I want a Windows laptop to sound as good as these. So, will I switch from the MacBook Pro to the Book 5 Pro? No, because I'm a Mac user, and that's never going to change, I'm afraid. However, I can appreciate a nice Windows laptop, and the Book 5 Pro is one of the nicest I've used. I think given its size in 16-inch form, it's incredibly portable, it's very fast, the battery's good, the display is fantastic, the keyboard is great, and even the ecosystem stuff, actually, is great. People that have shouted at me about this and said, you need to try Samsung's ecosystem. You're right, you're bang on. But I'm a macOS person, sorry. What I'd love to know, though, is what you think about the Book 5 Pro. And if you've enjoyed this video, guys, give it a thumbs up. It makes a massive difference. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, you know where it is, probably better than me. I'll catch you in the next one.